who now you've laid out your case there.
But you haven't laid out yours. I asked you to name the most important example of racism, and you gave white cops going after black people. And I told you, gave you the facts for that. So that's nonsense. So you must have something else. What else is it?
Game over, man. Game over.
Hello friends, welcome to Look and Live. You are now here with Pastor James Devallon, and this is another reaction video. I have Larry Elder. Okay, this one has been requested for such a long time, and finally, we're gonna get to it. This is Larry Elder and Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin made a huge mistake. He welcomed Larry Elder on his channel to speak about racism, systematic racism, and many other issues that were going on politically and socially as well. Well, in this video, friends, we are gonna dive right into the heart of this thing. But right before we do that, make sure you like and subscribe to the page, click the bell icon, turn on your notification as well. We are in for a good one today. I'm going to allow them to do the talk. We're gonna spend some time watching, so brace yourself, friends. Let us now get into the heart of the message.
I want to get this right, so I want to look at my notes for this. According to this, you are black. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay.
Not African American. That's not a term I like.
How come you don't like the term African
Ridiculous. I was born and raised in America. I've never been to Africa. Why am I an African American? Most of my people have been here longer than most of the other people in this room. Yet most people don't have a hyphen. I'm an Italian American, Greek American, Romanian American. It's an absurd term. It's a term that Jesse Jackson almost single-handedly crammed down the throats of our media. And after Jackson began to talk about why blacks should have some connection to Africa, all of a sudden, New York Times, LA Times, all of the media began using that expression. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't use the term African American that much because one time I had a guest on the show and I referred to her as African American. She said, well, I'm actually Jamaican. So, you know what I mean? So I guess that goes to your point.
And I remember reading one time, Dave, somebody was given a description of some suspect who had done some crime, was running away, and he was described as an African American. How do you know where he was from? Could have been from Africa, could have been from Jamaica, could have been from Canada.
So what do you make of that when someone like, because I know you really rail against Jesse Jackson and these guys on the left that use, and I want to talk a lot about identity politics.
Okay.
So the guys that use these phrases, what are they going for there?
Well,
what is the goal there?
The goal is to tell black people that we're victims, that discrimination and racism remain major problems in America when in fact they don't. And they want black people to vote for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party gets 95% of the black vote, and the reason they get it is because blacks are convinced that the #1 issue facing the country right now is social justice, racist white cops, discrimination, systemic racism, microaggression, whatever new word they...
You know, Larry Elder is an intelligent guy. First of all, I want to say, I love the fact, even though Dave Rubin and, people can go with all, the extra homosexual stuff and everything. That's not the purpose of this video. And I still have my biblical stand on that. But the thing is, I just want to give him credit for Dave Rubin has the guts to even have Larry Elder on his channel. Very few Democrats will actually dare to do something like that. We're not going to find too many of them who will welcome a conservative such as Larry Elder to discuss their views and the differences that they have, just to have a real good debate and discussion about their differences. That doesn't happen very much. And the other thing I also notice is the attitude of Larry Elder. He is so confident. This man has done his homework, and I admire that about him, man. So if you notice what he's doing in the conversation here, he is slowly moving Dave Rubin to start talking about systematic racism. He is actually making reference to it, and now the foundation is already laid for the following question, which is going to be, for those of you who don't know, this is considered the interview that is known as the red pill for Dave Rubin, that has totally transformed his perspective. Being once a Democrat, now he is a Republican, this was the interview that I will say converted him completely. So let's keep going.
Come up with, and it's a bunch of nonsense. The number one problem domestically facing this country is a breakdown of the family.
That's
and
true.
President Obama said it. I didn't. A black kid, or a kid, not just a black kid, a kid raised without a dad is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crimes, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. Wow. So you're far more likely to end up in jail without having a dad than you are because of a white racist cop.
Right. So, but
True.
you wouldn't not acknowledge that there are some systemic issues.
Give me an example. Tell me what you think the most systemic racist issue is. What is it?
Look what Larry is doing. Larry is pressing the issue. He is being specific. He's not allowing Dave Rubin to generalize the point. This is a good debate. This is a good way to debate issues. Larry is pushing for facts. He's asking for realistic statistics here to work with. And Dave Rubin wasn't ready for this, you know? So I can see what Larry is doing. As like, don't give me the general statements, because that's kind of what they do. Let's get to the heart of the thing, you know?
Is it?
Well, I would say that because black people in most cases, in many cases, were descendants of slaves, that racism as an institution, that it just, a certain amount of it just exists.
2015? Give me the most blatant racist example you can come up with right now.
Boy, you see what he's doing? He's pushing the issue. He's getting him to admit that he actually has nothing other than the fact medias have been pushing this idea of police brutality against the black race. Other than that, there is nothing. So when you really go into the numbers, as Larry's about to do, it just leaves you breathless. And I can see Dave Rubin is already in a very uncomfortable position already, because he doesn't have much of an answer to back up his statements. So he's lacking the footnotes, and he's in serious trouble right now. And I can see what's going on here. Mentally, there's a lot happening here. And also, look at Larry Elder's behavior as well. I'm not trying to examine the man so much. His behavior shows confidence. It shows knowledge. I mean, there's so much in his eyes. He's like, he is killing him, but in a positive way, of course.
You could probably find evidence that, in general, cops are more willing to shoot if the perpetrator is black than white.
What's your basis for saying that? Last year...
Well, look, I know a lot of people would say, look what's going on in Chicago.
I know what they would say.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what the facts are. 965 people were shot by cops last year and killed. 4% of them were white cops shooting unarmed blacks. In Chicago in 2011, 21 people were...
Brace yourself. These are the facts, okay? Brace yourself. It only gets better with this dude.
Shot and killed by cops. In 2015, there were 7. In Chicago, which is a third black, a third white, and a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides are black on black. About 40 per month, almost 500 per year last year in Chicago, and 75% of them are unsolved. Where is the Black Lives Matter on that? The idea that a racist white cop and shooting unarmed black people is a peril to black people is BS. It's complete and total BS. And the reason for these so-called activists saying this is the assumption that racism remains a major problem in America. The media, CNN, especially MSNBC, runs down whenever a black cop shoots somebody, and it's some march on Washington. It's ridiculous. Black people, half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year there were 14,000 homicides. Not talking about suicides, I'm talking about homicides. Half of them were black, 96% of them black on black of that 7,000. Where's the Black Lives Matter people on that?
So there's where you would say that this is purely because of social justice. This is purely because they want ultimately for people to be angry enough to just keep voting Democrat.
That's right. And where's the evidence of the lack of social justice? When a black suspect is killed by a cop, believe me, the media's on it. People are watching it, and justice will, for the most part, occur. In Baltimore, where Freddie Gray was killed. Freddie Gray died in a van, I should say, was killed, died in a van. You have a city that's 45% black. City council is 100% Democrat. The majority of city council is black. The top cop at the time was black. The number 2 cop was black. The majority of the command staff is black. The mayor is black. The AG is black. And yet here we are talking about racism. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
So it's funny,
absurd.
I find myself caught in between this a little bit as a liberal where I want to always try to defend the other. So in this case, the other being black people, I'm always sympathetic to that. And that, at the same time, I hear you laying.
I love how Dave Rubin is just taking the hate, though. He's taking some serious strong punches here. And he is very humble, to be honest. And he is not, he has his composure, but I can tell in his heart there's something happening here that he's gonna have to sit back and say, boy, I can't, oh man, I have no legs to stand on, you know. Larry Elder is just hurting him hard with nothing but truth and facts, and Dave Rubin is doing an excellent job holding up, but you can tell he's already lost this debate from the first few facts that Larry Elder's laid out. But he's still going. I know. I just appreciate how well he's balancing himself here, although he knows he's already lost.
Out a pretty solid
Well,
case.
these are just the facts. I'll tell you something else, too. There was just a study, University of Washington, and it turns out cops were more reluctant, more hesitant to pull the trigger against a black suspect than a white suspect, probably because of the fear of being accused of racially profiling and the fear that the civil rights establishment was going to come down on him. So if anything, whites are more likely to be shot by a cop under certain circumstances than a black person. And in the last 30 or 40 years, the percentage of suspects killed by cops who are black has declined 75%. However, the percentage of whites killed by cops has flatlined.
Yeah.
And so if anything, people are more concerned about shooting black people for fear that they're going to be called racist. And almost every one of these incidents, whether it's Eric Gardner in New York, who died because he was selling Lucy's and resisted arrest, whether it's Tamir Rice in Cleveland, who was twirling around the gun, whether it's Michael Brown in Ferguson, who had just committed an strong arm robbery, almost every one of these incidents involves somebody resisting arrest. Why don't you just do what the police tell you? My dad said, when I get pulled over, have my hand at 10 o'clock, have my hand at 2 o'clock, say yes, sir, say no, sir, make sure my paperwork is in order, and if I feel the cop is mistreating me, get a badge number and deal with it later on. If Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and Obama and the whole group of them told black people to do that, we'd have a lot fewer of these things to deal with in the first place.
That is so true. And this is not only true for blacks, it's also true for whites. It's true for every single race. It's not like, oh, because I'm a black man, therefore I need to be extra careful. I mean, certainly in certain states, I could certainly say that is true. There are some cops out there that I think who do abuse their power. But the thing is, it's just the right thing to do. These are just basic maneuvers. You know, these are things that you do to be safe. You want to get back home. The goal is not for you to get killed, you know, regardless of your skin color. But if you are blacks, especially when you know there are certain parts that could possibly be, you know, a little bit hotter than others because of certain areas where you live, which I've lived in Brooklyn. You know, I got stopped for nothing just because I lived in Brooklyn. And I remember just these cops were just like on high alert because of the, you know, the neighborhood and the level of crimes and what's happening there. So I can certainly understand that side of the story as well. But the thing is, it just makes sense. Like, you behave correctly as a person, and you decrease your chances of being hurt. You want to get back home to your family. You want to make sure you don't make matters worse for you, especially when there is really no reason for you to be shot. So I agree with this. It just simply makes sense. And I knew that's in a lot of our blacks, in a lot of what you see on those videos. I'm not talking about those who were shot, although it's true for some other cases as well. There's this level of disrespect, right? Disrespect of the police. They don't care what the police have to say. They think they can raise their voice. Why are you stopping me? Who do you think you are? Like, there's a lot of this stuff that's going on there, which does not really help your case. You know, you gotta think about all of that. And the police himself is just another human being, and he's gonna defend himself, and he's got a job to do, you know. So we have to take these things into consideration. So good advice right here.
Yeah. All right. So I'm with you. I'm hearing a lot of what you're
So
saying.
every time you hear him saying I'm with you, is having a change of mind. Is reconsidering his prior perspective. That means he's being converted. Okay, politically speaking, of course. Yeah.
To deal with in the first place.
Yeah. All right. So I'm with you. I'm hearing a lot of what you're saying here. So as a black conservative, then, who now you've laid out your case there.
But you haven't laid out yours. I
So-
asked you to name the most important example of
There goes
racism,
the-
and you gave white cops going after black people. And I told you, gave you the facts for that. So that's nonsense. So you must have something else. What else is it? If you think racism remains a problem in America, give it to me.
Well, I think it remains a problem.
Give it to
It's
me.
not. It's
Give it to
not.
me.
It may not be systemic in that we have. It's not like
Give
you're
it to
not
me.
being hired because you're black. There's no systemic reason, legal reason that exists, that kind of thing. But I think that racism, as a general
I need some
theory,
I need
exists.
some. I need some specifics. You gave me the white cop thing.
Specifics,
What
yeah.
else? Give me another example where you think it's a
Yeah,
problem.
stop generalizing. Give me the specifics. You see what he's doing? He's just he's hitting at some serious points. Like, don't speak to me in a general tone. Give me the specific. Give me some numbers. Give me some stats. Prove it to me. And the thing is, the left has not been able to prove it. Other than just people being outraged and emotion and so on, they have not been able to prove it where systematic racism is in America. They can't prove that because it just doesn't exist. And again, Larry Elder is proving that to be true again.
Problem.
Well, as a black conservative, tell me how do you get people to come around?
You're the one who made the assertion that you
Yeah.
think racism remains a major problem in America. I asked you to give me an example. You gave me white cops going after blacks. As far as I'm concerned, you didn't hold it up very well.
Nope.
What's the other argument you have? What's the other thing?
Well, I don't know that it's systemic in the sort of macro sense.
I'm not
but
mad. I just want to know what it is you're talking about.
No, that's exactly what. That's believe me, that's 100% why I
So we can
wanted
deal with
to
what is
have
it?
you.
Blacks
Oh
are not
my
getting into
goodness.
school.
It's over. You say, I don't know that it's systemic. By him saying that is honestly telling you he is taking back his previous thoughts. He is just repudiating and recanting from his previous way of thinking, showing that what Larry Elder has been telling him, he's accepting it to be true. And this is actually good for him as an individual. A person with this mindset can go far. A person with this mindset, even God can reach them, because despite the fact they might be in the wrong, they are open-hearted enough to accept truths. And I know, like, some people, no matter how wrong they are, regardless how many facts are presented before them, they will still deny it. I will say Dave Rubin is a different type of individual in that case, despite the fact he's a homosexual. And I'm totally against that because of my Christian views. I see a lot of positivity in him as an individual, and I admire that. That is something to copy. Just the way of him learning and responding and behaving and just taking it all in, that is beautiful to watch.
BS. We have affirmative action. So a black person with an SAT and a GPA of X will get into a school faster and easier than a white person with an SAT or a GPA of X. And if going to school is a route to the middle class, you can make an argument that blacks have an easier route to the middle class. If you're talking about about poverty, the poorer you are, the more accessible loans and grants are for you. The problem, the biggest burden that black people have, in my opinion, again, is the percentage of blacks, 75% of them, that are raised without fathers.
That's right.
And that has every other social negative consequence connected to it.
Thing is, I was raised in a home myself where, my father and mom, they were divorced, but I still had a relationship with my dad, but a distant one. I see the impact even today. And I just turned 37, by the way. October 10th is my birthday, so I just want to pause here to let you guys know today's my birthday. Show me some love. Thank you so much for all you do. So I can tell you, even at this stage of my life, even in my relationship with my wife and the way I behave with my children and relationship with others, I can see the impact that not having a father present in my home had on me. Now, he was there financially. He will show up once every 2 months and so on, once every month. That was nice, but the level of investment, that heart-to-heart connection, that you and I, let's go for a walk, let's talk face to face, give me some good counsels, I didn't have that. So I saw, doing my graduation, he was not around, and there was a lot going on, so I can understand this. And me and my dad, we have a good relationship. So what he's talking about here is true. The black community is dying from a lack of father involvement. There is a fatherlessness issue in the black community that is killing us, is crippling us. We don't have that manliness in our lives that is helping us to be more straight, determined. We don't have that correction, and that's why you see a lot of blacks are just running to gangs. They're looking for that respect, that love, that approbation and affirmation that they have not received from their home. A mother can only do so much, and it's so true what he's talking about here. And we can see all these other issues that are born from this one major problem of fatherlessness. We need a father present in the home, and if you don't have that, you need a father figure. Someone has to step up, and if you don't even have that, you need to know that God is your heavenly Father. You just need to have that father, or else you're gonna find yourself in serious trouble, and that's exactly what is happening here. Let's get back to it.
Crime, not being able to compete economically in the country, being more likely to be arrested. That's the number one problem facing the black community. And when I hear people tell me about systemic racism or unconscious racism, I always say, give me an example, and almost nobody can do it.
They can.
So the family stuff. So I'll follow your logic there on the family stuff. What can actually be done about that then? I mean, because that's a big
reverse the welfare state.
The welfare state.
In 1890, 1900, you look at census reports, a black kid, believe it or not, was slightly more likely to be born to a nuclear intact family than a white kid.
Yeah.
Even during slavery, a black kid was more likely to be born under a roof with his biological mother and biological father than today. What's happened is we launched this so-called war on poverty in the 60s.
There we go.
Where literally Lyndon Johnson sent people knocking on doors. I lived in the 60s, and people knocked on doors, apprising women of their availability to welfare, provided there was no man in the house.
Get rid of that.
And we went from 25% of blacks being born outside of wedlock in 65 to 75% right now. And you look at how much money that we spent on welfare, and the lines are parallel. It was a neutron bomb dropped on this country, not just on the black community, but on people in general.
Yep.
At one time, only about 5% of whites were born outside of wedlock. Now 25% of whites are born outside of wedlock. I was in college in 1970, and there was a report called the Moynihan Report, The Negro Family, A Case for National Action. It's written by a liberal, by a man who became a Democratic senator from New York. And at the time, 25% of black kids were born outside of wedlock. He said, my God, this number is horrific. If we don't do something about it, it could get even higher. Well, fast forward, 25% of white kids are now born outside of wedlock. It is the number one problem in this country, and what we've done, in my opinion, is we've economically incentivized women to marry the government, and we've allowed men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. And now we have this.
There we go.
So do you
And the left has done this.
Right. Okay. So do you think then that as a black conservative, that the biggest issue is it's impossible to have this conversation?
There we go.
Right. Like the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah,
right
we're gonna listen to this last point here, guys, and then we're gonna end this video. I'm gonna put a link to this video below so that I don't want to make this any longer past 25 minutes. So after this one here, we're gonna bring it to an end. This is amazing because this is where it all comes to an end. And I love how Larry Elder addresses this. He's going to correct Dave Rubin on his assumption of the reason why the left is unwilling to have these conversations. He's gonna tell you something here that is crucial. Now watch this.
now is rarely really discussed in the media. You know, people, you've written some books about it, and it's people talk about it every now and again, but we rarely have this discussion because, and this is where I will agree with you, that the left has made language such a problem, and everyone's so trigger warned and safe space that we're afraid that if you have this conversation, that somehow I'm going to come off racist. If
No,
you know, or
that's not where we don't have the conversation. We don't have the conversation because the left would then have to look in the mirror and go, Jesus H. Christ, look at what I've done. And they don't want to do this. I've had a radio show for almost 25 years. I've invited Jesse Jackson on 50 times, 60 times. I've invited Al Sharpton on that number. Maxine Waters, another loudmouth black woman around here who's running around talking about racism. She won't come on my show either. They don't want to deal with these issues.
No.
Why? Let's have a conversation. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong. Give me your data. Give me your facts. Tell me what you got.
Yeah.
And I could quote the Brookings Institution, which is a liberal think tank, and the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, and they'll both tell you that there's a relationship between crime and bad schools and going to prison and not having a dad. So this is not just a liberal kind of thing or a conservative kind of thing. It's a real world kind of thing.
Yes, it
and
is.
they don't want to have that conversation. I've never heard a reporter ask Obama about the connection between the rise of the single parent household and the rise of welfare spending. I've never heard anybody ask him that question, not one time.
Yeah.
And so, as far as I'm concerned, there's this desire not to have this conversation for fear that it then will cause you to rethink your assumptions. A psychologist would call that cognitive dissonance. This anxiety that you feel when you have had your assumptions challenged and you don't want to do it. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. So how then would
Ooh, boy, we can stop right here. Enough. Larry Elder is on fire. I love it. Dave Rubin did a great job holding himself together, although he knows he's been stomped, trampled, and stampeded. But he's humble enough to change his perspective. And I remember when I was once challenged by a cousin of mine on just basic biblical stuff, and I was coming off not so much as an atheist, more like an agnostic, believe God exists, but I thought I was good enough and I didn't need God. And he challenged me on a few things by asking me a basic question about the Bible, and I was clueless. And I realized at that very moment I couldn't speak on these matters without me first getting into a relationship with Christ and then have a knowledge of these things. And again, even when it comes to political stuff, I'm somewhat careful because I have very basic knowledge of these things. Again, Dave Rubin, oh boy, he was not ready for this. He was not ready for this. You should have never had Larry Elder on your show, but I really admire his humility, his vulnerability, and his open-mindedness as well to even have this discussion, because very few, as Larry Elder asserted here, very few Democrats are willing to have these debates and addresses these matters and lay out the facts for what they are, because they're not willing to even consider them. And I think that's a shame, and that's not right, especially when you want to be heard and you want to make a case for yourself. You're gonna have to come with the truth, and it seems like the Democrats do not have the truth when it comes to this idea of systematic racism. The truth is not on their side. It is on the side of the Republicans, and that is a fact to me. Larry Elder and many others have confirmed this to be true. Candace Owens as well done an amazing job in many of her discussions, but Dave Rubin, boy, you just got stumped tonight. But I want to say this. I can see why he had to change his mind. I would change my mind too after you go through a discussion like that with Larry Elder. But there's a lesson to be taught here. Here is the first thing. Even in the scripture, I will say, take this attitude of Larry Elder and his level of this readiness that he has to answer these questions. I will say, transfer that in your study of the scripture. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, and rightly dividing the word of truth. You need to be studying the word of God. But not only are we to study, but shun profane and vain babblings. In other words, there are some stuff we don't even need to waste our time getting into them either. But here is the other reason why we need to study. Number one, we study because we want to make sure that we are approved unto God, not unto men. But we also study so that we can answer for our faith. And you gotta know how to defend your belief. The Bible tells us in 1 Peter 3 verse 15, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason for the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. So you need to study. You must have the Lord sanctified in your heart. You must be ready to give an answer for what you believe. You must be ready to give a reason why you have this hope of the gospel in you. And you must do this with meekness and fear, not with brag and brothers and pride and arrogance, but with humility and fear. But I will say, don't study to defend false teachings. Study so that you can know what the truth is so that you can preach and tell and defend the truth. That's what we need to be doing, like Dave Rubin has done here. He had to have a change of mind. He got converted. The red pill had hit him hard. I can see why. After this one, he was never the same ever again. So thank you so very much for checking this one out with me. Make sure you like and subscribe to the page if you enjoyed this reaction video. Comment below, share your thought and perspective with me as well. Yeah, that was amazing. I'm thinking the next one I'm gonna do is Dave Rubin reacting to his own video, his red pill conversion video. I would like to see how he does that, because I saw in his channel he has a video reacting to his own video with Larry Elder. So yeah, that's a good one to check out maybe the next time. So maybe let me know below what else from Larry Elder you guys want me to check out. I know this guy is on fire. I love him, and I appreciate the content that he has, and I love his boldness and confidence and how studious and well balanced he is in his thinking. So yeah, he is certainly a gift. Until next time, and as always, remember to look unto Jesus, to live by faith. Have a good one. Bye.